It is Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and this is a study with me live episode. So, right now we're actually entering a Venus night, right? That's Venus night, and I'm here sniffing on my Venus cream um, while waiting for something to arrive. And the ascendant is ruled by Mercury. This is a Virgo ascendant, 4-degree Virgo, with Mercury in the sixth house in Aquarius. And Mercury is also ruling the midheaven, it's 2 degrees Capricorn. Luna is in Cancer, 6 degrees. She's in a great position. I didn't manage to catch like Luna stuff, but we have to understand she's also trining Saturn. So let's say to capture a Luna stuff, we would need the Saturn kind of off the rails. But it was an okay moon time in with the ingress to Cancer, and Venus is the ruler of the night and the hour, is in Aquarius, applying to conjunct Mars. I saw a lot of videos with Venus Mars, but Venus is also ruling Taurus. She's ruling Kettle, and she's ruling Taurus with Jupiter in Uranus. And I actually wanted to talk about Moon Uranus aspects. And what prompted me to press record, which is how I always do this, I was just watching some shorts and I was thinking about Beyonce's Moon Uranus conjunction after the Beyonce episode. She appeared in my dreams for some reason, so I guess I got downloads or something. I talked about, what doing that type of content is to me in another video. It's my videos section, and there are some surprises there for Uranus type people, I guess, or Aries type people. And so I was watching some shorts, and there was this AI Beyonce short, and I just couldn't help but noticing how this Moon Uranus played a role. And as we are approaching the Jupiter Uranus, okay, the Jupiter Uranus conjunction, I feel called to actually address more types of aspects to Uranus. And I've addressed Venus to Uranus when I talked about relationships, the it just happened ships, and so on and so forth. But the moon is kind of interesting. And so going back to what prompted this episode is basically seeing a big artist, musician in this case, and seeing how she adapts to the technology of AI by playing with impersonating herself as a robot. And that played along the Renaissance in general, but it also goes back to Beyonce's chart where she has a Moon Uranus conjunction. And so right before I drop off and take it from the personal to the collective, which is what I'm going to attempt to do in live with you right now, Uranus is an outer planet and the moon is a personal planet. And so moon, it pertains to where we feel safe, what we need to feel safe, the type of nourishment that we need. The house where it's at, it can also draw things, it can also potentiate things. Is the word potentiate? Yes. And as to magic, because Luna is basically, if I quote a Twitter post, I don't remember the poster, was like, Luna is the comma between as above, so below. Okay, we go to what is the moon attracting? Yes, and what is the moon attracting is kind of the energy that we want to download. and this is how we do it in magic, but this is also how we do astrological forecasting. Okay, if I want to give you a mundane forecasting or to give you a general forecasting, I would look at the moon and the moon aspects, or I would look at the big aspects, but I will see when the moon is hitting the big aspects is where you're going to see it the most. Okay, and so moon, yes, is also involved with eclipses. So moon and sun, anything moon and sun related will also be affected by eclipses. So our Leo house, our Cancer house, and moon is also the cycles of manifesting. So talking about potentiating, but manifesting, I guess, is the more wide term word. Because we use the phases of the moon to create something. It has a 28 day cycle, and people who menstruate and do not take like pills or eat that their food is actually nourishing, they have cycles that correlate with the cycles of the moon. It's not a goal setting issue, and there are actually at least two types of cycling. One is when you cycle to create something other than a baby, and so that's a different alignment with the moon phases. And then when you are cycling to create a baby, is a different cycle, and you can go back and forth between these cycles. So Uranus is an outer planet, and Uranus is involved in what we call revolutions, is very chaotic. And actually, that's this Saturday I was having a meditation about Uranus, and its symbol is kind of like two moon going in opposite phases, connected by a cross, with a little bit of a sphere or a circle in the kind of like the downside of the cross. And if you take a look at the completion of these type of two moons in a different phases, okay, it's kind of like the end phase of the moon and the beginning phase of the moon, so the complementary stages of life coming into a full circle, but there is a cross within them. And the planet itself, Uranus, it has a little bit of a silly walk. I like to address this in that way. And Uranus is involved in shock, in eurekas, in discovery. In terms of the science, it's kind of like a little Aries, because Aries gives us a completely different point of view that is even shocking to the rest of society. But Aries is moving very slow. It's a century level, not asteroid, but planet. Uranus would go around 7 years each sign, more or less. And where Uranus goes through, we see all of the phases of the moon. If I want to connect the moon to that, all of the phases of the moon in one sign, and we study them deeply. Okay, now to make this more concrete to our times, let's say right now the Uranus is in Taurus. Let's speak a topic of Taurus. Yes, nourishing your appearance. Okay, so nourishing your appearance, and so Uranus tends to bring in the various aspects of why would you do that? Let's say you would wear makeup to look beautiful so that you would attract a partner, also that you would attract a job and be representative. And then let's say, how would you do that? Or maybe then you would pay attention to this kind of like organic, grown or fair trade in your makeup and the labor involved with the makeup. And then you would take a look at, what about putting the makeup on for me? What about putting no makeup on? What about using a technology, which is also Uranus? Using a technology and putting I don't feel like putting makeup every day. Let's just put, a 5-year brow shadow, and that's that, okay? And then you would look at other topics in relation to this very topic, and you would go through this circle of like no makeup on, some makeup but only made from I don't know, mineral makeup, makeup but only from fair trade, BDS makeup. Oh my god, what happened? Is everything good? There's something exploded as I was talking about Uranus, which also rules explosions. Um, and, and eventually you would come to more or less of having gone through a journey of all these phases. Okay? And this is what Uranus does in a sign. When you have an aspect with Uranus natally, it means that you take what I said about going through all the phases and all the ways to think about and all the topics to think about this, all the discoveries, all the changes of phase, all the contradicting data, and even shocking experiences to do with that. You'd say, what is a shocking experience about makeup? I don't know. When Uranus was in Aries, I guess it was making an aspect to my Saturn, and I was dyeing my hair or trying to color it yellow, and so it became like greenish, and, and I had to recover my hair, and I looked like somewhere between an alien and failed housewife while I was in university, and the theme was to clarify things. Um, that also had to do with relationships, and that was very, very funny. It was a very, very funny time in my life. So you say this could be a shocking experience even regarding to these issues, or you do something shocking, or you are provocating in some way. So now we can see, if we connect the moon and Uranus, is that the place where you are safe is connected to the planet of shock and discovery and trial and error, but in a very chaotic way. And that means that your emotional reactions as well can be a little bit like this. And that also means that you provoke this emotional unrest in the people around you. It could come from a parent, one or two of the parents, the lunar figure in your life or the caregiver in your life. And it could be a theme, overall theme in the ancestral line as well. And that means that all of the things that are associated with like your psychological well-being, being nourished, your emotional safety, your safety relational pattern, because moon is also relational pattern, are imbued with shock, technology, discovery, provocation, and something that is beyond the self, okay? With an outer planet in general, you would look at something that is beyond the self. If something is a part of a generational thing, when a personal planet meets that, then you are a part of that generational story. And so, if you take a look at, let's say, Beyonce is a native with Moon Uranus conjunction, we see that along her life, she was doing things that are unpredictable, that are shocking, that are exploring unexpected things. She was accused in appropriation when she was doing The Lion King, so from her, let's say, Africa, more like her ancestral line. But also now doing a country album, so people like who cannot be country, and so on and so forth. And this is what's important for me, and this is what I understood when I did her chart, is that the moon Uranus, and this is where I begin to go general, is not about um, it's not about trying to invent yourself. It's about the downloads that you receive that are provoking to you and to others, that you cannot but carry out. And so living a life that is in tandem with this Uranus is essential for the moon to express itself. Moon is also to do with mothering. So whether you want to have children, not want to have, how do you raise your children? There is something unusual going on with this aspect. And so for the hard aspects, which are the conjunction, the square, and the opposition, and probably also, the 45 and 150, which is the inconjunct, and I probably missed something in the middle. Those types of concurrences are crises. Okay, you go through certain crises to do with that, and you might notice the things to do with the moon, and that can be something to do with housing, something to do with your mother line or ancestral line, something to do with parenting and being a parent, your inner child, or your own nourishment. Okay, can tremendously go through phases whenever Uranus aspects, and with the Uranus opposition and Uranus square, some significant growth is happening. With the square, there are also it's difficult to absorb the shock by just your natal chart. Like, you're gonna have to use some magic, or you invite in the moon trine Uranus or the moon sextile Uranus energies into your life. So this is what I do when I have a difficulty with aspects. So you might meet people that are going to assist you with that. But Uranus is also tremendous downloads, and it's a great, both Moon and Uranus are very attractive in the sense of attracting things to you. So there's also a lot of eurekas and a lot of I say it and it is, and it actually is. So that, of course, is also important to include your moon phase. Okay, is it a growing moon, where it's more about opportunities, but there can also be struggle, or is more like decreasing moon, where it's more about completion, trust, or even reality check, depending on the moon phase. You can go to astrosig.com, it's completely free, and put your chart in. And you get your moon phase when you do a synastry with someone, which is interesting. Probably there is another way to do this, but you get your moon phase when you do a synastry. So let's see who do we have that we know that has this moon Uranus. And let's see aspect and transits. And I'm going to go for the moon. Luna. Yes. Why am I looking for the moon? Sun, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Uranus. Definitely Uranus. Any aspect. I know what I want. Aspect search engine, but okay, we will have it in time, and then I'll see if I can do like celebrities or something. Why don't I see the moon? I just want to see the moon. Moon aspects. Moon aspects. But not for February. I want like all. Okay. This is interesting. I'm going to reverse engineering. Oh, I know what I want because I want to look for people. I want to look for people with this particular aspect. And it's possible to do so. So it's not just the aspect here, but if I want to look for like famous people, celebrity, search engine, and we get moon here. Yes, it's not so much where the moon is, but where actually the aspects. So we get moon. Yes, we do. In the aspect, do I have, let's say, the conjunction. So let's do the conjunction with Uranus. And now we're going to get this list of celebrities. So we had Jude Law, Pierce Brosnan, Ed Harris, James Stewart, Orson Welles, who also shares a birthday with me, Judy Foster, Forrest Whitaker, Tom Hanks, Terence Stamp, Lionel Barrymore, Nelson Eddy, Eva Gardner. So I'll try to take a little bit. Okay, I see a lot of actors. I see one screenwriter, which is Orson Welles, actors and directors. Michael Palin, member of Monty Python, May 5. Screenwriters, Andy Warhol, also painter and cinematographer. Hilary Duff, fashion. Tom Waits, composer. So we have plenty of actors and actresses, some screenwriters, composer, James Clavell, writer, Alanis Morissette, Hermann Göring, politician, military leader of the Nazi Party, Jay-Z. Oh, this is interesting because I did not know his chart. And Jay-Z as well has a Moon-Uranus conjunction, but in Libra. Beyonce has it in Scorpio, and he has it in Libra. Oh, this is very interesting. And also in the second house, if Beyonce's ascendant is Libra, that would make a Scorpio her second house. I told you that the Uranus was what got me to think, I think it should be Libra because when Uranus was going through Aries, that's when she began to talk about like the divorce thoughts and sugar. So the sugar-free lemonade was mine. Lemonade came out. Sugar-free lemonade. I will forever remember this as sugar-free lemonade because of the satire I wrote at the time. So that would be Uranus going through her seventh house, and his eighth. So that might be. It doesn't make sense for her to have, Scorpio ascendant, because that means that she's going through this now, because Uranus is since 2018 is actually in Taurus, and Lemonade came, I think, 2015, 17. Yeah. Probably before 17, that's for sure, because Sugar-Free Lemonade came in November 2017. And I was joking. It's just kind of like borrowing a joke on that title. So that was, which was not about like Beyonce, just the title. Nothing else was about Beyonce. That is interesting. So Moon Uranus in Libra, and for a man, Venus, which is what rules his Moon Uranus, is actually can also be the spouse. So for Jay-Z, the moon Uranus is also a little bit the shock of the kind of a spouse he has. And this is Beyonce also happens to have moon Uranus conjunction, but in Scorpio. And that is very, and Beyonce knows, yes, and that is, of course, we can take a look at her chart again, which would give us actually a moon Uranus in Scorpio for both is the second house. So that means that while moon Uranus hard aspects can be difficult on the personal level, because your reactions are shocking, your emotional reactions are shocking, they can be detached, they can be suddenly you need space or stuff like that, but also suddenly you need connection. And but having on the second house, it means that you can tap into a certain skill and develop something that is provoking. So yes, Jay-Z also benefited from Beyonce as well, and was involved in advising her when it talks about business or when you talk about even her image. So he was. It doesn't mean that she doesn't, she's not sovereign, but definitely he's an important figure in her life. She released her first album, I think, in his record label. So they were profiting off of that moon Uranus each individually. She was doing that in Scorpio. That would make a lot of sense that this is a second house for her as well. So Joachim von Ribbentrop. So see, let's look at the Gering chart, because hey, why not? Is something that is unusual in the field. We get mainly actors, composers, writers. It's kind of like entertainment industry with Moon now. But Moon is also the people, and Uranus is a revolution. So let's see what we have for political leader. And here the Moon is separating from Uranus, also in Scorpio, and it's not making any major aspect. We have a Pluto-Neptune conjunction that actually mitigates Saturn opposition to Jupiter and to Mars in this chart. Yes, I'm not going to try to full blow analyze this chart, but definitely if the ascendant is indeed 0 degrees Sagittarius, and this is an AA rate, so this is a very accurate chart, according to at least what the data that we are given, that would be Moon Uranus in the 12th. So would give us a little bit of a more secluded type of aspect, but also this person could get downloads during their dreams. This person could have secluded life that is unusual, and not just occultistic, because occultistic was not that unusual, especially not for political leader. You could not be a politician without. Okay, that was the mainstream. It still is, and so it's a person who wrote a satire about academia, where leaders are trained. Then I was kind of like a little girl that pokes at something and didn't know what she poked at. Then go try and find therapy after that. Oh my God, no. So yeah, gives us a more secluded, unusual type of seclusion, if that makes sense. I don't know how it expressed itself in his life. And that would also mean that the Moon-Pluto conjunction is in the 7th house. Here is mitigating some sort of a Saturn opposition from the 7th house with Mercury Yes, Mercury in the second house. So he would benefit from his partners too, but in kind of a different way, but with conflict. Saturn-Mars opposition is both something of the warrior, but some tremendous, you have to hold a tremendous conflict, because Mars is always wanting to go, to initiate, to go through, to do things. And Saturn is very measured, is very structural, and they both collide. When you have this within a person, it's a tension that they hold that they really can't sustain, but it is also sustained for a while before it is exploding in some inevitable way. Usually we would find it in people who are Martian in nature. So they would mitigate that by doing martial arts of some sorts. So Ribbentrop, is this from Ribbentrop-Molotov? No. It's another German politician. And he was born in 1940. He died in 1946. So he was executed by hanging. Moon Uranus here this is very accurate as well, the chart. Moon Uranus is in the 10th house, okay, in Scorpio, opposing Jupiter. I don't necessarily think that this is related to his death, if you are wondering about this. I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying that, Uranus, yes, it can rule suicide more. But here he was executed. Hanging is more of an Algol thing, although I don't see Algol prominent here. I do see Jupiter, Venus, and Sun opposing this Moon Uranus. That gives us a lot of tension. If you go through more like a Yair Tribelsky tradition of analyzing a chart, or the Pluto Sol generation of analyzing a chart, you basically look at the child that their parents were on opposite tracks. And so the child had to sort of mitigate this opposition, growing to parents that one says one thing, the other says another thing, and one parent could also rebel the other parent, but the other parent is also rebellious, and then you are a child growing into such a household. So this can be how it is expressed. Yes, it doesn't necessarily mean you will end up being a Nazi, okay? So, and the more we learn about these, then Gordon Ramsay, chef, restaurateur, TV personality, presenter, businessman. And here we have this Moon-Uranus conjunction in Virgo, 23 degrees Virgo, opposed by Saturn, Chiron, and Lilith. Which I think, for those who know even a little bit of astrology, needless. You don't need to say a word, right? We have a Sun-Venus conjunction here as well. That's a little bit mitigating things, but with Ketu, it's more difficult to bring in the new with this, because you might be a little bit traditional, with both the good and the bad of being that traditional. And here he is bringing that to his fourth house with Mercury in the 7th. So this is yet another controversial figure. Yes, but here is controversial. Usually I think about the opinions that he has, the political opinions that he has, and we have the vicinity to Pluto here, so it's not a pure Moon Uranus. Okay, it's not that Uranus is not political; it's the planet of revolutions. And that, this is a distinction, because politics does not mean necessarily revolution. Okay, and revolution does not mean necessarily politics. Okay. A revolution can be, for example, the many couples that decided to have a more relaxed type of commitment style. Okay, it's like we're not monogamous, we're not non-monogamous. That can be a Uranus type of revolution. Hey, we are having our own style of relationship. It doesn't have to be political. It doesn't have to be like a reaction to some political agenda or thing. It's just like, hey, we found that this is a good life for us. If it is revolutionary, it's to the ways of how people used to live in our nearest generation, but not necessarily in older generations that are way older. Adding Pluto into the mist, we also talk about power, about a transformation from the core of something. And fourth house can be housing, can be relationship, the political of the domestic politics, basically. It's domestic politics. I don't know his opinions too much, but I know that people always mention him as this person is kind of like provocative, and this can get a little bit of a type of let's rebel and do the men go to hunt and women stay in the kitchen, although he's a chef, so I don't know. Yes, would want to be in the kitchen. And we have a president, Hugo Chavez. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. The president of Venezuela. And another moon Uranus. But this is a more relaxed aspect here because the moon is in Cancer, 14 degrees with Jupiter and the Mercury and the Ketu. And this is ascendant. And Uranus is in 24 Cancer, which is very close to Procyon. But if ever it's going to be a different take on Procyon, this is also a sea level chart, so it's not the most accurate chart. We could have the houses wrong, and we could have the moon actually closer to Uranus or more distant to Uranus as well. So this is a more relaxed conjunction that we have here. And on a mundane level, if moon rules the people and Uranus rules revolution, we would expect here for this to be a populist leader. And I'm using the populist leader as by my instructor, Professor Danny Filk, which discussed the populist leader as a leader that genuinely represents the people and what the people want. Okay, so not popular leader, not popular. Okay, like Beyonce is popular. She obviously doesn't represent every American. But a populist is basically someone who's supposed to have a very strong connection to the people and to represent what the people want. Okay, in a video that I have taken down because very close, actually my mother argued me to not air it. I actually argued that Adolf Hitler at his time was a populist leader. Probably Professor Phil would turn the other way around and say, I don't know this person. But I basically argued that Adolf Hitler was a populist leader because at that time this is what the people wanted. And we have a very recent wave of regimes around Europe, but not only Europe, that talk about, let's say, the value of family and to expel anybody who is foreign to the land and so on. And while it's understandable that people don't want their rights voted out, and democracy to be gaslighted, it is also very obvious that somebody who speaks about the values of the family will eventually end up sending everybody to war and having broken families all over the place. So Hugo Chavez, Uranus moon, okay, an unusual type of leader that is representative of the people in some unusual way. He could be a populist leader of the underdog. And you say, what the heck is that? Well, that is a situation where you are, it's very close to Aries actually, because This is where you are a representative of the people, but only of the people who are the underdogs, the excluded in some way, or the unusual in some way. And that can be criminals, but that can also be the misrepresented. And that is making it very, very close to Aries. A little bit on the lighter note, if we go back to the example that prompted this video, that is Beyonce, we saw that her Renaissance, kind of her little magnum opus, little big magnum opus of Beyonce. So with the world and all, if you know, you know, then this is very much giving voices. Some people say appropriating, some people say giving voices, and to artists that are not so remembered or represented at this time, people who have paid a contribution to music in various genres, but also groups of societies, whether it is sex workers, whether it is LGBTQ. Okay, people who are like, oh, LGBTQ. She was paying a very big contribution to sex workers as well. In this one, I have my own reservations about the power relations in this issue, but is definitely a part of the provocation. And so with a leader, we get the type of person who is a leader of the underdog, a leader of the misrepresented. It's the closest to Moon Aries that we can have. So yeah. Gold digger, sailor, wanderer, adventurer, Jack London. Gold digger is actually gold digger. So that is very interesting people coming about. And this is a Moon Uranus conjunction. It's a B-rated chart, so we don't know for sure like the degrees of the midheaven and ascendant. And this is Moon Uranus in Leo. And this was a person whose profession was gold digger. He was digging up gold. Now this is very interesting because Moon Uranus in Leo and the Sun is in Capricorn, a 22 degree Sun. And this is, yes, if we got the date right, then it's probably 22 degrees Sun. So, you know, digging up for gold is is mining, basically. So it's a difficult job. You might not always have necessities around, and it's a lot of competition. It's little. But what Saturn rules is rocks. And the metal for Leo is actually gold. So mining for gold among the rocks. And Saturn also rules the tedious work of doing that. And Saturn here is in Deneb Algedy, which actually rules wealth redistribution. I don't know anything about this person. But just looking at the chart, there was attempt to painstakingly gain a better position by doing hard work associated with gold. So it's not gold and riches by being the son of royalty, but rather for doing the hard work of actually mining the gold. And this is very American. It's very much like the idea of I was actually thinking about this today or the other day, where I was thinking about the miners or the gold rush, okay, that we had in the United States, and how, you know, what was the gold rush? People were mining gold, but this gold they would not stay with these people. They would have to sell this gold. And so the gold rush was basically about people being exploited as miners and looking for gold, which they thought that, oh my God, I could go very rich. You can only go very rich if you sell this gold. And so you would have to sell this gold to be rich. Yes, you would make some good money, but you were doing basically the very hard task of finding gold for the rich people. So this chart is really kind of like reminding me that It's very hard work to find gold, but with Saturn and Deneb Algety here, there could be a wealth redistribution aspect to it. Okay, so this is not about finding gold to get rich just to get rich. There is also an ideological facet to get gold. And mind you, I'm going to look at who this person was. John Griffith Chaney, Jack London. Let's just do a quick web search. So that's the guy. We have American novelist and journalist and activist, pioneer of commercial fiction and American magazine. He was one of the first American authors to become an international celebrity and earn his large fortune from writing. I would need to see the writing because writing involves a Mercury here. He was also an innovator in the genre that would later become known as a science fiction. But he was digging up gold, so I want to understand more. Part of a radical literacy groups, The Crowd in San Francisco, and a passionate advocate for animal rights, workers' rights, and socialism. You see a lot of wealth redistribution kind of thingy, and a lot of ideology. London wrote several works dealing with this topic, such as his dystopian novel The Iron Heel, his non-fiction expose The People of the Abyss, War of the Classes, and The Before Adam. His most famous works include The Call for the Wild and White Fang, both set in Alaska and Yukon during the Klondike Gold Rush, as well as the short stories To Build Fire and Odyssey of North and Love of Life. So he wrote about the South Pacific in his stories, such as The Pearls of Parley and The Heathen. Gold Rush and first success. So when he was 21, his sister's husband sailed to join the Klondike Gold Rush in Alaska. So not only they were digging up for gold, and you know Saturn is a cold place, so they were digging up for gold in the cold, like in the snow. Wow. This was setting for some of his first successful stories. However, it was detrimental to his health. He was, like many other men who were malnourished in the gold fields, London developed a scurvy. His gums became swollen, leading to a loss of his 4 teeth. A constant gnawing pain affected his hip and leg muscles, as his face was stricken with marks that always reminded him of the struggles he faced in Klondike. Father William Judge, the Saint of Dawson, had a facility in Dawson that provided shelter, food, and any available medicine to London and others. His struggles there inspired London's short story To Build a Fire, and many critics assessed as his best. So yes, people talk about the gold rush. Well, I was actually thinking today a lot about Americans and how we are given a lot of misconstrued views. And so in some cases, it was indigenous people that lived in America, of indigenous ancestry, tribal ancestry, that kind of revealed the truth to me, because we only hear about, oh yes, white men were conquerors, white men were this, white men were that. We don't hear about, these stories too much, and how the actual people, the white people in this situation, these working conditions, and and this type of it's not even a pioneering, it's the hard work of a pioneering, it's the actual, you know, builders. um, and so we, people, they kind of, you know, if I had to compare the caricatures that they made on the Jews and banking, this is how the American, you know, person who participated in looking for gold, like the gold rush, is presented. And or kind of like Emir Kusturica with a scene where, you know, this person's kind of like drinking, you know, from, you know, this bottle that's supposed to be like gasoline, and it's like, ooh, yuck, that's water. Like, it's not gasoline. And this is how these people are represented. It's kind of like gold hungry people. But is it just people who try to get a job that could actually change their social position? Some people with families and so on. So, and this is a lot of how not only America is misrepresented, but actually the working people are misrepresented as people who have this gold rush. Well, the actual gold rush is of the people who hired them and perhaps didn't even pay them, and just say, oh, we're going to have this little carrot, you know, come, and you may find gold. While their living conditions were terrible, all that much that they were going for that gold. Um, and that is very interesting. So I, again, probably a person that I would need to learn more about. So yeah. So we have novelists, Pasternak, writers, playwrights, George Bernard Shaw, Arthur Miller, Louisa May Alcott, Kelly Osbourne, Herbert Hoover, so another president, and then another Nazi. I don't know what about this that causes. Well, if you think about, I don't have the chart for like the establishment of the Nazi party, but if you think about the Nazi party, and again, this is why I argued that the leaders were populist, especially Hitler. National socialism, okay, the combination of nationalism, which is very Mooney, okay, it's very to our family, to our tribe, to our nation, and the nation is kind of like the extension, not the extinction, but the extension of the tribal society. And Uranus is a kind of like an all over the world, so it's like a world of nations. Okay, if you think about the Spring of Nations. And so the nuclei unit of analysis became the nation state, and Nazi was very much in alignment with that, horrid as it sounds, okay? If you see, there are lots of Palestinian people that were involved, like in not really freedom fighting, but more like do what you like and call it war, when what you like is to torture people. And they were found like with a swastika or with the book of Hitler or with the this. And again, I don't know if it is like propaganda or if it's an actual reality. I also seen people talk about Hitler in kind of like on almost endearing ways when Black people actually who were supposedly analyzing like his skills of communication, but being very drawn to this character. Okay, and so the unusual worldwide phenomena that is Uranus, okay, and nuclear phenomena, which is the nuclear family, the tribe, and the nation. When they come together, then one of the unusual things that we can have is like socialism, but only for our people. Who are our people? That is already Aries involved here with the Ubermensch and the eugenics and all the journey of who is entitled to be free, which is also a Masonic journey. I don't know the teachings of the Rosicrucians, but definitely the Freemasons had these teachings, but you come to these teachings when you are on the upper levels. This is where you get to around the 30th grade of Masonic teachings. So you just spend your life like, oh, these nice guys that are giving nice information, and we have nice ritual and a sense of community and this and that. But you can understand that more and more is required to get to upper grades in the lodges, and it's kind of like the difference between, you know, saying mashallah when you give a person a compliment, and, you know, interpreting jihad as actually bombing people and expecting virgins on the other side. Like, I don't know what. Yes, but it's and it's so in every hierarchical society. It's not about Masons. It's not to single out Masons. It's just a known example here. So this is fundamentalism, and this is fundamentalism. That being said, the process of people attaining freedom is indeed a process, but then if you are owning the gas, then many points of interference in your hands as to how processy the process is. So this is why I'm supportive of housing first to solve homelessness, rather than having people having to prove that they are deserving enough to have a place on the land, which breeds Hitlers. This is what happened to Hitler. So yes, Moon Uranus can also give us unusual notions of what is the nation state. I don't think like Israel or Palestine have this, if you're wondering, not in a conjunction at least, but it is a kind of weird, like the dissonance between like a Jewish and democratic country and so on and so forth. People say, well, America is Christian. Yes, America is Christian, but you can completely be an atheist in America, depending on where you live. And it's not about, it's, you know, nobody would consider that your nationality should be taken away or something like that. In Israel, we have every Monday we have the new topic of the day. It's like, who should be ruled out of being a citizen? Whatever. So, but with America, it's vote. Tennis player, we got Roger Federer. We got a tennis player that's unusual in the field, is Swiss as well, from Basel, and relatively young, born in 8 August 1981, so he's still alive. He or she? Yes. A grade, so it's relatively good grade for the charts. And this conjunction is indeed in Scorpio, with Uranus 26 degrees Scorpio. Lilith is involved in this conjunction. This can give for an unusual type of sexuality, but because this is Mars ruled, it can also give us a knack for like athletics. Mars is in Cancer, actually on my moon. In the 11th house, so this nice reception between Mars and Scorpio, Mars in Cancer, Moon in Scorpio, and we have the conjunction also Lilith and Uranus. This is, I don't know a thing about this person, but definitely Lilith involved here makes it not a pure, okay, Moon Uranus. There is another level of it can both be like the gut feeling of the body, feeling when you are doing athletics. So being very intuitive, very connected, and being connected to your gut instinct. But they can also be unusual gut instinct, and yes, they can also be unusual sexual reactions. Okay, so it's not impossible that such person could be involved in like sexual scandals. I don't know if it was, not at all necessary. It just means that there is a sort of, if there was no divergence here, it is also connected with a sexual centers, a sexual involved reaction as well. or he could be drawn to such women that breathe in that type of unusual energy. Again, I cannot analyze this as pure moon Uranus, because there are way more planets involved. So we have, we have a chemist. Thank you, Dmitry Mendeleev. Yes, chemist. And this is Uranus conjunction with the Sun and Moon. Uranus on the 22nd. This is a sea level chart, so not the most accurate, but Uranus is on the right degree with the Sun and the Moon conjunct. This is a new moon energy conjuncting Uranus, and we have a chemist. Now, what I already like about this chart, Uranus can also be a field of knowledge. Okay, the Saturn, I'm at least one Saturn Uranus of the generation of Saturn-Uranus conjunction. One of them, I think, is Caitlin Kopok. I know she has them both. I don't know if the conjunction, and she literally created a completely new way of doing astrological magic. And I think coined the term astromage and astrological materia. There were talismans before, but she made them more accessible and more like, like a body cream or a ritual honey or a bath salt that you can incorporate in your everyday life. And it's also not like a talisman, which would stick with you. Though I must admit that those things would stick as well. Yes, particularly if you do like the Simo Mundi, but she also later created kind of like that was her magnum opus, a big, chart that is delivered as this conglomerate of talismans that created the Kimo Mundi. And for that, you really needed not just to mold metal, though she did talismans as well, but you really needed something that you can blend, that went through this alchemical process, so like a body butter or honey or salt, that you can pour into and mix in together, create something bigger than the sum of its parts. And another is someone that I knew personally, and she is basically, what I'm predicting for her is to revivify the science and the tradition of birthing. So both Caitlin Kopok did something, it's like the Tema Mundi, and birthing in the sense of giving babies, and how you give babies, and what should we do around this, and what is good for us. Okay, kind of like what's between orgasmic birthing and, let's say, the medicine of accompanying a child to the world. And I see that she's creating something that is her own. She's creating a new field of studies, a new field of science, basically, to do with birthing as well. When I think about this, I don't know why it could be completely accidental, because I wouldn't necessarily connect Saturn and Uranus to birthing, but it's just something that comes up. And when you have a new moon with Uranus, my prediction is that there would also be some new science involved, because Moon and Sun are ways of seeing the world. And I always like to quote the conversation I had with Yair Trubelsky, famous Israeli astrologer that I had the honor to know. And we were talking about eclipses, and he said, I don't know what people find in eclipses. I was just looking into eclipses, being so excited about this. And he said, I don't know what people find in eclipses. He said, it's just, it's the sun and moon. It's a change in the way you see things. And Jenny just went off and, kind of like, what's that? It's not interesting. And I'm like, oh my God, that's why eclipses matter. So, so that was a famous conversation to me. And this is really a change in the way you see things. So you put it with Uranus, which is technology, you get a completely new way of seeing scientific phenomena, and that is a new field of science. So here we have a chemist, Dmitry Mendeleev. I just didn't look it up. Like Dmitry Mendeleev, I didn't connect anything, and then I go to the chart and I start like I predicted this is going to be a new way of seeing science, and this is basically the person who created the freaking the this is the table, right? The table of the everything. Oh my god. Oh, this is so cute. It's the stuff that I like doing. So this is so lovely. It's a new moon. Okay, so it's a new moon applying to this Uranus on the 22nd degree of Pisces. And this is on the Pisces Virgo axis. So he had a more holistic view of chemistry and drawing in a table of what each element looked like. Yes, this is the Mendeleev. I'm not getting it wrong or anything, right? So really fascinating. Had to have a Pluto on the 11th degree. You gotta be a little bit suicidal to do all these things. Uranus on the 22nd, yes, there was lethality, and he was Russian, so probably he was given the funding for, can you make things that kill a lot of people with no big mess? He said, I'll try, and so in the meantime, he got to learn. I'm just, I'm just kidding. I have no idea how he got to do these things, but let's just take a look at his info. So let's just look at the appearance. You see this like very kind of like a Russian, it looks like a Russian author, but it could also come across as a painter or a foundation or founder of of a country. That's how it looks. I don't know why. Dmitry Ivanovich Mendeleev, sometimes Mendeleev. Yes, I actually know to read the Russian, and I'm very proud of myself. It's the same. Was Russian chemist and inventor. He is best known for formulating the periodic law and creating a version of the periodic table of elements. He used the periodic law not only to correct the then accepted properties of some known elements, such as the valence and atomic weight of uranium, but also to predict the properties of three elements that were yet to be discovered, germanium, gallium, and scandium. So this is a very Uranian man that we're looking at. So finding the patterns of the previously, exposing new patterns. So early life, the periodic table, which looks, oh, there's a sculpture in honoring of him in Bratislava, Slovakia. And not only did he discover a certain pattern, but if you discover a certain pattern, then you are likely to predict the more elements that will be discovered by this pattern. This is the essence of, of how we would know that this pattern works. I saw in a dream, listen to this, oh gosh, this should be, we are not taught this at school. At school, we are taught the Mendeleev thing. No, this is not interesting. What he discovered is lovely, is important when we want to apply it. But the interesting thing is, how do these people come to discover these things, okay? I saw in a dream a table where all the elements fell into a place as required. Awakening. I immediately wrote it down on a piece of paper. Only in one place did a correction later seem necessary. Okay, and of course, when you have sun and moon, it's a picture. And the moon, he could be feeling something. So Mendeleev is quoted by Inostrancev. Okay, This is, before this channel was called Spirit of Matter, it was called a channeling science, and I did it actually after the Me Too, because during the Me Too I felt that the problem was not just like a sexual harassment thingy. It's not, oh, they said something bad to me and a scary structure involved, but also something involving in energy. And I noticed that what I study in academics is not sufficient enough for me to explain first not only what happened, but also how I got out, how I had a little bit of an instinct to get out, which later when I would go to therapies would be a different thing, where I would pay attention only to energy. And when there were red lights literally appearing in my dreams, I thought because I am coming to heal a relational pattern, the red lights are to the dreamer, the other dreamer, which would be the therapist, and then not to me. And I was only half right in this, because they were definitely addressed to me as well. So, as I would soon understand. And so, when we don't have the capacity to incorporate our faculties of knowledge, okay, and to dream a dream and to look for this dream, and we have to find a justification. Why are you asking this scientific question? I had a dream. Why you go there? And I noticed when I would write my, not only my thesis proposal, but any essay that I would have to write in university, I felt that I like to do this. I like to go into the topic, to think for myself. What do I think? To make a prediction, to think for myself. And then I would see that, yes, all other people looked at this, I don't know, medical sciences in the same way that you're looking. If you go to a shaman, they're like, duh. But when you come from, academia, it's like you discover America in a very literal way. So for me, it was like a complete discovery. I tried to go to the essence of things and to the simplicity that's underneath it all. That exposes the complexity, it exposes simplicity, and so on. But what I did not do is read a bunch of stuff and then say, there is a pattern emerging from this bunch of stuff. I'm not saying this is the wrong way to do it. That I want to ask this because of that. No, I just I woke up with this, and I saw this, and I saw this, and I saw this, and I Googled that, and I saw, that this person today is a very important person. I'm probably not all that off in my in my thing. Oh, but that person said that. Oh, but I agree with that, and I don't agree with that. And it's more of a conversation. We don't get to have this conversation in academia. And that is saddening, but it's also a question of funding. Yeah, who funds these academic institutions, and why don't they want you to learn about, let's say, a history of politics, when you're doing political science? Okay, they're thinking to cancel these courses, and they want you to research voting patterns, because that's what they need from you. So this is the only way for you to get, even in a peer-reviewed community, the only way for you to get, into a Q1 is, and you have to get there at least a couple of times a year, is to do voting patterns. And so you have to get your own field of interest kind of in the roundabout way to get this to do. But it's not how it works. Is you wake up with a freaking dream. The people asking that were successful, they woke up with a freaking dream. Channeling science was like, let's talk about this. Like, I cannot do it in academia. I'm not going to pretend to these people that, that this topic that I'm presenting is this, detached scientific topic. I lived and breathed it, and I'm still living and breathing what I'm doing. So this is something that happens to you. And we must be allowed to talk about this. Okay, we must be allowed to discuss our ideas as they come to us. It's not something that should be I'm not saying that you have to idealize that this person had this epiphany or didn't have this epiphany. And to have these epiphanies, they come from the mundane life, from doing things that are a bit unrelated, from taking a walk, from playing with the dog or the cat, from taking a shower, okay, from sleeping. Yes, so you have to have enough of these to be a good scientist or a good, worker or innovator or person. So, unaware of the earlier work on periodic tables going in the 1860s, he made the following table. So we have the table that he did and added additional elements and made his periodic table. And he was... Okay, so he made a formal presentation to the Russian Chemical Society titled The Dependence Between the Properties of the Atomic Weights of the Elements. And yes, so atomic weight and valence. And there is the principles governing the periodic table. So again, we don't really see... Yeah, we don't really see all the how he got funded, why he got funded, why his research not another research, why his rules not other rules. We don't see that. And there were probably reasoning for why this was accepted, and why, because there are many ways in which you can look upon a scientific topic, and we only get the ones that fund certain, A-bombs or fund certain wealth holders. Okay, there are many people who did discoveries in free energy, and they're no longer with us. So it's not just, ego and plagiarism. It's also a real question of funding. It's also a question of what do we do with these innovations. Yes. And this is going back to very simple things like, did you laugh enough? Did you dance enough? Did you live enough? Why do you want more light? And to complex things like understanding that many of the scientific discoveries that we are looking are already made, and there are now rabbits that are taken out of the hat whenever a political crisis happens. And this is a little bit of the story of scientific revolutions. They happen all the time, and they're only being shown to us when we are at the time of political upheaval. So this is how I feel right now about that. Aleksander Kwasniewski, former president of Poland. Okay, MacGregor Mathers. Okay, we had Niels Bohr, nuclear physicist and scientist. I predict the Pluto to be involved here. Exactly. Why? Because nuclei is Pluto. Okay. And so this was actually a decreasing moon. So it's a completion phase. Niels Henrik David Bohr. Okay, this is interesting because he was a nuclear scientist. He was born in 1885, died in 1962 at 77 years old in Denmark. Moon Uranus are very tightly conjunct in Libra, but this is a closing moon. So he was finishing up upon someone. Let's see his chart. He was doing he was more probably applying something. It doesn't mean that he didn't make a new discovery. It's more like a lot of people trying to understand this, and then this one, he gets to apply this one correctly. Foundational contribution to understanding atomic structure and quantum theory, received Nobel Prize, philosopher and promoter of scientific research. Bohr model, boil this, boil that, boil that, boil that. Theoretical physics, Cambridge, Copenhagen, Victoria, University of Manchester. Electron theory of metals, Christiansen, Lev Landau, Kramer's Osmani. Okay. Developed his model of the atom, proposed that energy levels of electrons are discrete and that electrons revolve around the stable orbits around the atomic nucleus, but can jump from one energy level or orbit to another. Although the Bohr model was supplanted by other models, its underlying principles remained valid, conceived from the principle of complementarity. The items could be separately analyzed in terms of contradictory properties, like behaving as a wave or stream of particles. The notion of complementarity dominated Bohr's thinking in both science and philosophy. I don't know if this is, in essence, reminding of non-duality. I know that there are a lot of analogies between quantum and I don't know why not string theory. It's not many analogies I see from spiritualities that incorporate M theory or string theory. I don't think it is that much more complicated. I think it's actually was made to be more simple, but I honestly don't remember this too much. For some reason, I don't see too much of it at all in our philosophical world. And then the question is why? Okay, what are the implications? And I'm a strong emphasizer of the value of pragmatism. And this means that our beliefs have implications in the world, and we can pick and choose for what are the implications for our beliefs in as much as it's accessible to us. So one of the extensions of pragmatism is looking also at a political context, a social context, and seeing why was this picked and not another. And it's not necessarily because this was the best competing theory in terms of what we would eventually see is like, oh, there's more supporting evidence of that. Well, there's so much more to the process, and there's so many more interceptions and interventions in the processes. Any person who has innovated in any field can attest. So yeah. So he helped refugees from the Nazis. So one good point. After Denmark was occupied by Germans, he met with Heisenberg, who has become the head of the German nuclear weapon project. In September 1943, word reached Bohr that he was about to be arrested by the Germans, so he fled to Sweden, then to Britain, joined the Tube Alloys nuclear weapon project, and was a part of the British mission to the Manhattan Project. Okay, so yes, he was involved in applying something, and eventually in the Manhattan Project. Yeah, it's like, what are your best chances of surviving a nuclear war? Well, developing a nuclear weapon. That seems to be the teaching. So I don't know if it is good or bad. Why would we be led to survive in this way? There's an architect, Louis Breguet. For me, I'm so terrible at the pronunciation. Usually I'm good with pronunciation of languages, but the names is difficult. Moon Uranus conjunction in Virgo. This is an 8-degree orb. It's a little bit of a wider conjunction. This is a very accurate AA rate chart. So, but this is in the 12th house here with the Mercury in the 3rd house. Architect. Mercury in Sag. It's interesting. And Saturn is not even Saturn. What's going on? There's Chiron in Taurus, Neptune here involved. Mars so, and this Mars is ruling Saturn, but what type of an architect he was? Because it's not coming from Saturn, his creation. It's coming from Uranus itself. So it should be like a technological, I think a notion of freedom or wide spaces, but also small, like playing with the small and the big. Technology in architecture, unusual architecture. Was it like a space inspired, so something to do with the philosophy? But the architecture itself is coming from the Uranus here rather than the Saturn, where I would expect it to come from. There's a kite ship, and Saturn is even not involved in the kite ship. Yes, there's the Sun and Rahu in Capricorn, so he meant to do build something to do with housing. Yes, this is where he's heading, but the moon here is from the 12th. The Uranus is trining the sun, and there's a beautiful kite shape here. The kite shape is kind of like the bow and arrow. It's kind of, you stretch the arrow. You stretch the arrow and you point somewhere, and everything is supported. You have a balance from here and a balance from there. You're going to get where you're stretching your arrow from, but there is a conflict between you and that target, because when you stretch the arrow, you're supposed to hit the target by releasing, and then when you have an opposition, what's actually happening is that you have a person facing in front of you. You don't want to shoot them, right? So there is something very interesting about this kite shape where everything is balanced and set out, but you still have a dissonance to hold. Or an opponent or more like a contradiction to hold. Okay, it's not about solving this contradiction sometimes, but about holding that. And then the Sun is squaring Saturn with Mars in the 8th house. So let's take a look at this person. Thank you for marking everything but what I asked. It happens, it's okay. I don't do what I'm supposed to either. Okay, born in Neuchâtel, and a Prussian principality. Was horologist who made many innovations in the course of a career of watchmaking industry. So why did it say architect? But even watches are to do with Saturn because it's to do with time. So innovating on time is very Uranus, but also involved with Saturn. I get this from the trine to the Sun, which is Capricorn ruled, and Rahu, which is Saturn ruled as well. So the Sun that's trining this Uranus. founder of the Breguet company, which is now the luxury watch division of the Swiss watch group. So this is a watch to invest in. Horologist. Horologist is a new word for me. This is okay. I'm just I'm looking at this. I have to share something. When there was the war and a city was supposed to be slaughtered, and I was scared that there was a psychological war. So you get like like voices and stuff. It's not just the war on like the physical thing. It's also psychological, but it's also psychic attacks that many people got. And one of the voices that I said was kind of showing me something like this, but like with my face and saying, "This is what will be left of you." And as I'm looking at this, I'm laughing because it puts death, at such a context where eventually this is what's left of him. You know what I mean? A lot more, but this is this is funny. This is very funny to look at in this situation. It's yes, I don't know if the humor passes on the delivery, but that's pretty much what's up. In his lifetime, he was considered the leading watchmaker of his day, and he built a clientele that included many leading public figures and members of the European nobility. Okay. So he managed to apply to the crowds that could pay him well. Alongside his friend and contemporary John Arnold, Breguet is now widely acknowledged as one of the greatest horologists of all times. One of his famous ancestors was Jean Breguet, who died in 1593. A Protestant pastor, Neuchâtel, very much influenced by the ideas of John Calvin. Calvinism, Protestant Reformation, figure in the development of the system of Christian theology, Calvinism. So including its doctrines of predestination and God's absolute sovereignty and the salvation of the human soul from death and eternal damnation. You probably, how should I say that? Coming from holistic medicine and seeing the effect, I told you I much emphasize the notion of pragmatism, which is one of the greatest American contributions to philosophy. And this is that if people are born to raised to believe that they are no good and they need salvation, and only by following so and so will they get salvation. I know that there are contexts and situations to everything. That being said, Christ consciousness does not necessarily have anything to do with this type of practice, and there is in the way a lot of politics and a lot of psychological wars in the masquerade of religions to make people to feel like they are no good and they need salvation. They are no good, and that has a huge effect on people. So it's a sort of a psychological pattern. And those who practice this pattern does not necessarily do this from evil intent, but it doesn't mean where it was born was not necessarily in favor of mankind, or it was in favor in one context but not in other context. And we need to understand more about the belief and its implications. So he was influenced by Calvinism, and you see the notion of this time, making time, the Lord of time. Saturn is the Lord of time in the sense of accumulated action. But I said, Saturn also rules agriculture. If you actually grow things, you know that you can plant. You can only do your best within the conditions that you are applied. Okay, you can paint with the moon phase that is the most available for you to plant in a way that something will grow. You can nourish the soil if you're lucky enough to be on rich soil. You can do that. You can tend to things. You can ask. You can pray. You can bring water. You can, within your ability to do that physically, emotionally, and so on and so forth. And eventually, there is also the touch of something that's beyond you, whether this crop grows. And there's something that needs to be said. Okay, people talk about opportunity, readiness that meets opportunity. This is true. But also Saturn is not just the Lord of Karma in the sense of look at how your actions have accumulated to so much good, or not, but is also more than that, okay? And this is where the outer planets play a significant role on expanding on that more than that. And those who had Saturn maturation, Saturn return during a hard aspect with Uranus, boy, did we notice that. Okay, I was looking and people are trying to help me when I was in between houses. One of them were trying to gather money for their teeth treatment. Everything that they knew that worked for them was no longer available or true to me, or was not available, okay, or I could not do this. Yes, if I could work as waitress, I would not need to be acknowledged as cuckoo to be having a grant for my studies, because I could make the money myself. But nobody acknowledged my physical disabilities, so they had to acknowledge me as cuckoo, and that would make me the grant. And by the way, almost get me to situations where really, really dangerous for me. So the Uranus Saturn, or another planet, okay, that is involved with the Saturn that has a duration, okay, like an outer planet, can make the Saturn very, very different. Okay, sometimes the Saturn is seen that those things worked for the older generation. Now we need to innovate in that. My Saturn square was about that too, but in more a relational way, kind of understanding that both me and this person is a bit older than me, a generation older than me. Both of us don't really know what love is, and when he goes to his psychologist, or when I go to my psychologist, none of them really understands what's actually going on. And when we try to apply what they say, then we are basically almost mutilating each other's soul. So this is absolutely not useful. Okay, and so we had to find a way around issues of love, relationships, sexuality in another way, and then I would to become a Me Too veteran and one of those people who are kind of like speaking up in right a couple of months before the Me Too. So that was not something that people could conceptualize. Okay, psychic attack was not something that people could conceptualize, and boundaries of the astral realm, something that I'm still confused about today, to be frank. So this is also something that the outer planets can give you, where Saturn, yes, it will give you good karma of tending to things, but you also need to incorporate those planets when it is relevant. And when you do, you can, Pluto gives you deep wealth, Uranus gives innovation, and Neptune gives the ability to let go of an issue and have it still be okay. So yeah, actually before I recorded my 4 or 5 song sketches, I was just saying, I don't have a big Mars Capricorn moment. Okay, Mars at the end of Capricorn moment, where it was applying to conjunct Pluto, and I felt there's something missing, something missing. I completely forgot that I recorded 7 minutes of a song sketch to think about what's missing to me in music industry. And it's not the artists are very talented, but something in the exploitation in the industry itself. And then I uploaded this, and then suddenly I began to record and record and record. So I surrendered the fact that I don't have a big peak of Saturn on the 29th degree of Capricorn, kind of like exaltation degree. We're supposed to do something. And then stuff came out. It wasn't catching on fire, but it's also the Neptune type of quality. What came up was of a Neptune type of quality, and I'm slowly approaching my Neptune square. So this is also how Neptune would give you surrendering to the grief, to the loss, to the missing, and then all the things that evolve that. With Neptune, it can go viral for some. It's like you completely forgot about this, and then poof, it becomes viral out of you surrender this, and it becomes a pandemic. So more interesting, this is just a conjunction. Valerie Trier-Weiler, and let's see, this is journalist. Uranus in Virgo. But again, we have this Pluto. And this is releasing from, no, it's building up to the full, no, releasing from the full moon. So this is also a decreasing moon, just releasing from the full moon. So she was exposing events, but she is exposing events. But this Pluto is political, okay? And so what you would see the Moon-Uranus-Pluto conjunction. You would not see the Moon-Uranus conjunction. The Moon-Uranus-Pluto, she could be covering political revolutions, or could be having opinions that are revolutionary around issues of politics. And when I say politics, please, I mean oil, I mean nuclei, I mean hidden wealth. Okay, I don't mean Israel, Palestine. There's no Israel and there's no Palestine. A couple of corporations that are funded by people that we don't even know, and our taxes are compounding in a way that we don't even have access to. So, let alone that the investment work in such a way that you and I, given our tax money back to us, we would not be exposed to the brackets of investment that, as let's say, a conglomerate of people with masses of, let's say, millions, it's only enough for you to have 1 cent, and then 10 million people having this 1 cent. You understand it's a different bracket of investment than you and I having this 1 cent to invest in, whichever type of, how do you get something to be so yielding? So it's both a bubble of investment and exploitation and slavery, which get us our teeth crisis, okay, the absorption of food, the agriculture, even our fruits and veggies, when they are grown in such conditions that they basically they don't get to thrive because people are suffering and being sexually harassed, which is one of the worst energies you could have around food. And we eat that. Okay? That's a problem. Valérie Trierweiler. Née Maisonnant, born 16 February, French journalist and author. She has posted political talk shows and contributed to Paris Match. She's best known for having been a companion of the President of France, François Hollande, until 2014. So, what did, like, I don't understand this. In-role companion of President. In-role? I don't understand this. Let's see. So she has her alma mater in Pantheon Sorbonne University. The domestic partner, because they say enroll. It's kind of like weird. Both the career. Okay. She studied history and political science, obtained diplôme d'études supérieures spécialisées in political science. So political science and the career. She began to host talk shows, especially interviews, on the Direct 8 television channel. Fronted the weekly political talk with Le Grand 8 until 2007, and with Michael Jedji hosted weekly show Politiquement Parlant, Speaking Politics. So a lot of political talks while she was... It's very interesting, because how come a partner of a ruling president is having a political talk show? This is very weird. You know, the transition from journalism to politics is natural. In Israel, we had a couple of people that made such transition more or less successfully. The most famous is Yair Lapid, which I covered when we had the millions of elections before the war, in between the revolutions and before the war. And then when I think about, so it's not unusual for a person to do journaling, be journalist, and then you are exposed to things. Yes, as journalist. When I was doing this only in high school, I was meeting the leaders of our nation. So of course you see these people and you see the topics at hand, and you get your own, I won't say a deeper look, because you get a perspective. It is perspective after all. So you are involved in politics. You are required to understand politics when you are doing journalism. And then becoming a politician can be even a natural transition from this. It's not an easy journey to do because your credibility on the line. You can never return to just be a journalist, and you cannot necessarily, your trust is being on the line, both as a journalist and as a politician. And then, if you are interviewing a politician is one thing. If you are becoming politician is another thing, and there are different levels and different lodges involved that you might not know about. But then when you think about, we had this in Israel with Mirav Michaeli, which has a partner who is in Satar, and he now tries to go to politics as well. And so we need to be sensitive about this, but we also need to raise, pop the question of power, because the watchdog of, when the watchdog sleeps with those he watches, it's a very interesting observation point. But is it good for politics, and is it good for journalism? And yet we cannot ignore that we are humans, we have passions, we have desires, and things happen. So, yes. And you see she has Moon Uranus, but this is with Pluto, so around politics. I'm trying to find what was making, other than personal life, what was making her, particular. So her marriage, her this, her that, other than her spouse. Okay, so cheating stuff, but I guess I would have to know the show to understand more about her. Chaka Khan. Salman Rushdie. Okay. Immediately, I would do something, and then I would get here, like the finger of his breast, like another nervous system interferes, and it's like, oh, talk about this guy. So Salman Rushdie, Ahmed Salman Rushdie, Indian author, writer. People are like, oh, is an author the same as a writer? And that's a person of the word. Okay. Coming from a family of people of the word. So Moon Uranus, and Uranus on the 22nd degree. This is Gemini, and this is again a new moon. New moon separating from Uranus. He talked about revolution. So the situation of people, the situation of children of the revolution. This is a fairly good rate chart, a chart. I don't know if the midheaven is exactly 22nd degree. But yes. So this is more about unusual childhood. An author to do with things of unusual childhood at the time of revolution, where mass death, many people dying. This is Uranus on the 22nd here. Trying to think about Flying Bombardier, because Flying Bombardier began with children. There were a couple of things that were not even in Flying Bombardier. They were pre-October 7th. That I would need to still go through if I'm able to. This was it was a satire that was written under fire, literally. But Flying Bombardier, it would probably have quite of a similar significance. I would need to look at the lunations and when I wrote the thing, but this reminded me a bit of Flying Bombardier, or a lot more than I would like to to admit. So yes. So this is the story for Rushdie. And again, unusual type of author about unusual childhood in the shade of a revolution. And they were probably about his life as well. Poet, soccer player David Icke. It's not this Icke. It's not this Icke that he's not a soccer, right? He's not a soccer player. It's not that David Icke. Moon Uranus in Cancer. Transit Mars in Scorpio. So some unusual kick. Okay? We get, where's the Jupiter in 0 degrees Taurus? So I recently had a Jupiter return. Yes, unusual athletic skills. It's a B chart, so the houses might be a bit different. And then we don't know if Jupiter, because if this Jupiter is Mars ruled, let's see the degree for Jupiter. Degree for Jupiter, 12 minutes. If it is an anoretic Jupiter, it would give me an unusual, innovative things he did with the legs that got him, an unusual posture of the legs that got him to be successful. Mercury is Mars sign, but Mercury, okay, with this, Mercury is our hands and limbs. I predict that this Jupiter is on the anoretic degree. Let's see, what was he known? Now it would give me this David Icke. It's not the same. I know I'm stupid. It's not the same David Icke. Okay. Right? I'm not wrong here. Or is it? Exactly. It's not. I told you it's not the same David Icke. Or is it? No, it is just. It's the same David Icke. David Vaughan. It is the same David Icke. Because I don't know him as a soccer player. I don't understand. Wait. Let me have a moment here. Former footballer and sports broadcaster. So he had a good technique with the feet. He had a good posture with his feet. And then, you know, it's also ruling like, you know, the hips with Jupiter. That would make him like more successful. But it was doing something in unusual technique. But now I would only see about conspiracy theories. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's a journalist, but whatever. It's all conspiracy theories until, you know. And it doesn't mean that everything is true, but it's just like, hey, that's what's up. The Babylonian Brotherhood, Illuminati, or elite. Shapeshifters. I had a dream to do with that. Like somebody telling me now, I'm glad that you understand that you are also a shapeshifter. It was so weird. I don't remember who said that. There's somebody who's like, oh, I'm glad that you understand that you are also a shapeshifter. Just so weird. Negative energy. Okay. New World Order. It's not a conspiracy. The world of just common sense, okay? Pluto in my 12th, this is my turn. Post-truth era, ending freedom of speech. There are literally meetings at the WEF wanting to limit the freedom of speech and the information wars and whatnot. Okay, fine. I'm actually looking for his soccer stuff. But you know what? Let's take a look at the more contemporary things. Like he's considered having unusual opinions and theories around our reality and the world politics. Very global politics. Where is Pluto? Is Neptune here? There is a square. It's not really a square to Neptune. It's kind of a square to Neptune. Pluto in Leo. It's more the Uranus type of stuff. You know, thinking about like Anunnakis or space stuff or reptilians. So he sees the world in very much like the terms that are to do with Uranus. Okay, let's say a more Pluto-Neptune person like me would see it in terms of energy leaks, whether you light a city or you bomb a city, the natural reserves that are made by nuking stuff, the Ukrainian person that decides to go to Chernobyl and recultivate agriculture because radiation is better than war. All the world should be seeing that, in my opinion. His opinion is like the reptilian, the development of like the DNA, and I'm getting loud in here, sorry. I'm getting and stuff like that. And that really depends on kind of like what other planets are activated for you into this. So he has certain downloads. So I predicted what made him a good football player, soccer player, had to do with some unusual technique that he was applying with his feet and posture, and that would get him to almost intuitively get what to do there. And then when he started talking about like what he downloaded, probably maybe even as he was playing football through his body, then yes, I'm actually getting a little bit of the energy of a person that actually had a conflict within me too, but they were also very much into sports, and they were also like this channeling type of person. I knew it, but he wasn't talking about this. And when I said this, I felt like their energy coming in. So that would probably be very interesting to them. So yes, and so when you go on expanding on that, then Uranus gives you these downloads. And here these downloads are very vivid. There's also sextile with the sun, so he could be getting a good visuals and feelings about what he sees, and this is the language that he created. Actually, if I'm speaking of the Me Too, I said I was writing a satire and exposed a lot of things that I didn't even know what I am exposing. And so there was a situation where I said something, and they're like, oh, okay, we wanted to make sure you are okay, and this and that. I said, no, I'm not okay. They said, well, do you have somebody who can sign that you're not going to unalive yourself? I said, well, I'm not going to unalive myself. I was talking in general about people, but you know what? Take me to hospital if you want to and see that I'll have my stamp. And so that's how I finished the whole issue of the people who came after me. And in that place, I saw a person who looked at me and said, you look 200 years old. I said, thank you very much. And he said, you are a young soul. I had no idea. And this person said to me a lot of things, and the many things that this person said to me are happening today. And so, and he was very sensitive to frequency, but there was also some trauma under governing, and the pills that they were given, I tried to ask him, he said, does it help you to ground, to stay in your body? He said, a little bit, but then I fly again, I dissociated again. And of course, when there is trauma sitting there, then a person literally cannot be present inside their bodies. So many of the things he spoke about, like the way that transgenderism is basically used in the sense that, he didn't say it in that way, but it's like transgenderism exists. This is my opinion. Okay, transgenderism exists. That being said, there is washing to everything. There is washing to feminism. There is washing to racial representation, to indigenous communities, to kidnapped people, and there is also washing to LGBTQ, and this is one of the washing to LGBTQ, and this is creating a tremendous dependency, unnecessary dependency, and cancel the polarity between people, between, let's say, kind of like a more male, a more female, to basically create a situation where you control the birth of people, and so it's a bit of eugenics involved. And so because transgenderism is involving the ability to have children outside of the connection of, do I have a vagina or do I have a penis, then these type of people are being used. This is my opinion, and to do washing, and so they are dependent on accessibility of this type of issue, which I think is only solved when we address rare cases, and the rare cases can teach us a lot about our reality. And hello, Plain. And we should be investing in exploration of rare cases, whether in the medical field or any other field. Otherwise, the rare case becomes a pandemic, whether it's a refugee, sexual boundary violation, a psychic attack violation, or a kidnapped person, or a rare disease, and so on and so forth, or a homeless person, right? So, yes, you're on the moon. So this is also what Uranus gives, and this is in Cancer. So Uranus in Cancer, okay? Getting downloads around origins, okay? This is Moon. We have a racing driver, Jacques Villeneuve. We have a model, Carla Bruni. Model, okay, we didn't have a model here before. And this also involves Pluto on the 22nd degree. Okay, this is following David Icke. How should I say this? I talked about the fact that to be, let's say, a politician, you need to be involved in certain hidden wealth. And you say connections is wealth as well, okay? When you talk about building a community, whether it's building a community so that you can sell some astrological consultations or courses, building a community so you can grow a permaculture on this and that land, or building a community around, running nations and stuff. Has its pros and cons. So with this type of triple conjunction, and this is a closing moon, okay, this is Virgo. Mercury is in Sag, 28 degrees. I have no idea who this person is, okay? I'm not, like, I was from the age of a millennial, so we knew Claudia Schiffer, and I had a fitness of Cindy Crawford, and this is it. I know Halle Bailey because she is making funny, relatable YouTube shorts. So that's pretty much my knowledge of modeling. And so I have no idea who she is, but this gives me, it's giving MK Ultra. I'm sorry, I have to, okay? It's giving MK Ultra. Because this Pluto on the very lethal degree with the Moon and Uranus, it's giving a lethal power play that was very early on in the childhood activated. and or some sort of unusual power play. With Uranus is also downloads, and Mercury is also nervous system. In Jupiter signs, yet again childhood, and Jupiter is again in Virgo, so something to do with that. I don't know what it is. I'm saying MK Ultra because this is what the known thing, but there are many other things, whether it's expendable children or the children that were somehow being put in a certain position so that they would be later either musicians or actresses or actors, or kind of seducing people to trip, it's not to trip them over, because if a person, if a child seduces a person, okay, that child doesn't trip the person over, but the child is used to trip someone over. Of course, this can only work with people who would succumb to this abuse. And now you understand that you cannot be in a certain position unless you are of the people that could be succumb to this abuse and be thrown off. Okay. And yes, we think about like sexual harassment things, but no, it's even worse because this involves children. I have no idea who she is, and we're probably not going to see the answer for that. And it doesn't mean anything about her, okay, in the sense of, she's not to blame, of course, right? But this means that there was such power play involved, it's hidden. With Uranus, it can be exposed in some way, and I'm an astrologer, so naturally an astrologer would expose that. Is reasonable, but yes, Uranus is also related to astrology. Italian and French singer, songwriter, and the former model who served the First Lady of France from 2008 when she married Nicolas Sarkozy. Sorry. Okay, all the male figures around my life now having a moment. This is what I love about astrology. I look at the chart, I try to say what I see here, and I look who this person is. Like I said, I have no idea. Oh my God. She was born in Italy and moved to France at the age of 7. Bruni was a model from 1987 to 1997 before taking up a career in music. She wrote several songs for Julien Clerc that were featured in his 2000 album Si j'étais elle. Bruni released her first album, Quelqu'un me dit, really? In 2003, which eventually spent 34 weeks in the top 10 of the French albums chart. She won Victoire Awards for Female Artist of the Year, 2004 Victoires de la Musique, released her second album, No Promises, then following year she released her third album, Comme si de rien n'était. Okay, little French songs, French touch, sold 5 million albums during her career, which is a lot for kind of like a local artist. She's in France. In 2009, she created Carla Bruni Sarkozy Foundation for Philanthropic Efforts. Early life and family. Born in Turin, Italy, legally the daughter of Italian concert pianist Marisa Borini and industrialist and classical composer Alberto Bruni Tedeschi. In 2008, she told the Vanity Fair that her biological father is Maurizio Rumert, a classical guitarist who comes from a wealthy family. So all musicians, Rumert met Borini at a concert. Okay. He was 19 years old, classical guitarist, and their affair lasted 6 years. Wait. Yes, so her mother. I was just kind of like, how Uranus does it get? But okay. Her sister is actress and movie director Valeria Brunitzeshi. She had a brother, Virginio Brunitzeshi, who died from complications of HIV. Her legal paternal grandparents and her maternal grandfather were Italian, but the last quarter of her ancestry is French. Second cousin of Alessandra Martinez. Is an heiress to fortune created by the Italian tire manufacturing company Fiat, founded in 1920s by her legal grandfather Virginio Brunitzeshi. Okay. Wait, the family moved to France in 1975, purportedly to escape the threat of kidnapping by Red Brigades, a communist terrorist group active in Italy in the 1970s and 1980s. So you see this 22nd degree Pluto here playing a role of escaping, in this case, organized crime. Terrorism is organized crime, okay, by definition. Bruni grew up in France from age 7 and attended the boarding school Chateau-Mont-Choisy in Louisiane, Switzerland. She went to Paris to study art and architecture, but left school at 19 to become a model. By her biological father, Bruni has half-sister Consuelo rumored. So we had personal life. Her lack of French citizenship disallowed her from voting, but she would have voted left-wing due to it becoming a family tradition. So she would have voted to the person who was not the representative. She was being the wife of Sarkozy, but her vote would go to the opposite, to the opponent, to the opposition. So yes, very right is interesting, unusual political power here with the nation, and she could not vote. Okay, so the wife of the president could not vote because she doesn't have the nationality, albeit she's married to the president. Okay, so in Netherlands it's different, but it was also different when the prince, I think, married a Spanish woman, and she said, okay, if you speak the language, then you can be a citizen. I'm happy that I'm citizen by descent, because just when I need to speak Dutch, I don't. The other way around. So in October 2011 interview with the British newspaper The Sunday Herald, Bruni said, my family have always voted to the left. It's a tradition. I will never vote right wing. Okay, so the loyalty to the family versus the loyalty versus like the man she is with. And you see that the power of the family wins in this case. So said, I'm not against my husband or his party. She's left wing. I'm not an activist. In May 2007 interview with Le Parisien, Bruni said she's no longer felt left-wing and identified as an ultra-Sarkozyist. 2012, she said to Vogue, my generation doesn't need feminism. I'm not at all an active feminist. On the contrary, I'm bourgeoisie. November 2020, she said, "Of course I'm feminist, like every woman is. My husband is very much a feminist man." She said that she was not at all a political person. She supports same-sex marriage and same-sex adoption. Okay. What is St. Ovens? She had a first child, the son Aurélien, with philosophy professor Raphael Enthoven. And it said she was mistress of his father when she began her relationship with the younger person. So you see, something with the father here is unusual. So there's the power of the father mother, okay, power between the father, the mother, kind of like a play of parenthood here. But this can also be, she has a seventh house ruled by Saturn. So Saturn is the father. Where is Saturn? Here is in Aries. Square Sun in Capricorn, and there is a square between the Sun, Uranus in particular, and the Sun. So unusual relationships with the father, and the power with the motherland, and the mother is involved. So this is another one. But again, you see, I cannot pull Pluto, and in this case as well Saturn and Sun, out of the equation. So it's not a pure Urano-Pluto. It's just the Urano-Pluto, Urano-Moon, but it's an addition of Pluto and addition of Saturn. And you see, seven Cancer ascendants, they have a seventh house Capricorn. It's a seventh house that is ruled by Saturn. It's not the Saturn of Aquarius, okay? The Saturn of Aquarius can give you age difference as well, but it can simply mean that you have a little bit more of a scientific genius next to you, or an outcast, or like some Twitter post said, just like a Leo, but with not like other girls complex. So this is very true. While the Capricorn would definitely give you issues with tradition, not necessarily traditional role, but definitely age gap can be, definitely issues of a father can be, definitely relationships, the duration of a relationship can give very long-term relationships, but it can also give long terms of being without an official person, and this is a generational case, a generational planet in the seventh. So your relationship has to do with more than you, and so the power of traditions, the power of the ancestry, and also the Saturn rules stocks, investments, time itself, and that is playing a part in the relationship as well, the timing of relationships, and so on. And then we have a racing driver. Another Moon Uranus figure in Libra. Moon Uranus in Libra. Conjunction, opposition, Sun. So this is an applying to full moon here. Race driver. So Venus rules cars. Moon Venus. Venus is in Pisces, Jupiter is in Sag, so he felt free by doing what he did. Mars Capricorn, full moon in a square to this Mars that rules the Sun, and Chiron. There's something to do with the cars that he was maybe this is a sea level, so we might not have the houses correctly. But there is something to do with the cars, so something unusual about the cars. Yes, can also be accidents involved here, I'm afraid. There's something to do with cars that are unusual, so some technologies around cars. Doesn't particularly give me speed, okay? Actually, Mars in Saturn is not of a speed type. And Venus sextiles Mars. Mars is trine in Saturn, is in Taurus. Mercury in Taurus is a lot of slow. I don't understand why fast cars. Because of the competition, he had to do fast cars, but it's not okay, so competitive around cars, but it's something in the nature here. He could be very accident prone because of this, because here there's something unusual. He liked cars, he liked the technology of cars, he liked driving cars. It gave him freedom, but he wasn't necessarily a fast-paced person. This can give accidents. It means that there are certain types of, it's kind of like you compromise something that you're not intending to compromise. He's competitive, yes, but he could be more like a car engineer or innovator in in making cars. This would be more compatible, but because I guess race cars are funded in a certain way. Well, I don't have the chart of my father, but so it would be interesting because my father liked to watch race cars a lot, and he liked to do with the mechanics of literally everything that takes you from one place to another. But here I definitely see a person who is not a fast-paced person in a situation where I guess to make a living or to support himself, he would have to do race cars. Why race cars? I don't know. It's nothing particularly speedy. There is Rahu in Aquarius, but Saturn is in Taurus. Yes, Taurus rules cars, and that can give us in a roundabout ways fast cars, but it could be a build-up through to a lot of accident-prone incidents. So let's see more about this person. And in a way, there was something technological to do with the cars that he was driving. Jacques Villeneuve. Canadian professional professor, racing driver, and amateur musician. Of course, Venus is cars and music, okay? This is why you hear about the Lexus and the Hummers and the this and the that, okay? And do we have Maserati songs? I like Maserati. I should write a song about Maserati. Won the 1997 Formula One championship with Williams, in addition to Formula One. He has competed in various other forms of motor racing, winning the 1995 Indianapolis 500 and Indy World Car Series, son of former Ferrari racing driver Gilles Villeneuve. Oh, that one. That's the thing, because Saturn is tradition, Taurus is tradition, but Taurus is also cars, so it's coming from a family of race cars. That now it makes sense. You see that something had to be there. Because I'm like, Saturn in Taurus is slow. This is given Maserati, it's not given Ferrari, but this one is a tradition of Ferraris. So it's a tradition of fast, race cars. And Saturn is just like continuing on this tradition, so it would be in Taurus. It's appropriate, but this is very weird. I wonder if it still gives the inflammation kind of friction, because when you have, the race is very Marsy, it's very go, go, go. And then you have the, Taurus is like, stop. And that can give you a little bit of a friction that causes inflammation. So I wonder about this. Okay. So many career. I don't know. Where would I get this? So music. And when I'm getting tired, I've been doing this for 2.5 hours. I wanted a coffee before that. Okay. Eccentric, opinionated, and outspoken. Defied convention and challenged authority. Very Uranian. Saying exactly what he thought in an era where drivers were expected to express only sweet-talking platitudes. Okay? Then we get the moon Uranus. He says what's on his... Uranus doesn't have a filter. With Uranus, you say something, okay? A century after... No, a decade afterwards, like, shit, I said that. Okay, and I mean it. But did I actually say that? Yes, you did. Out loud, yes, you did. Well, I mean it. Okay, that's very Uranus type of expression. And with Moon Libra, this is the voice, okay? So you would have this type of voice. And you were that voice in the crowd that had no filter. He was popular with the European press for his reliance to speak his mind at the time of political correctness. So he was kind of like the sort of, not really underdog because he had lineage around this, but this is... He dyed his hair in various colors and sported grunge streetwear. Okay, so his behavior earned him multiple cautions from the F1 governing body, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. Max Mosley, the association's president, commented that Villeneuve's controversies would benefit him when he was no longer successful. I'm not sure what I'm not sure what that means. His decision to be independent as much as possible from media relations to avoid overpromotion was endorsed by Pollock. Okay, this is very, this is, I have to say, this is not even the moon Uranus, it's just Uranus. Okay, as a native Uranus in the 10th house, one of the conversations that I had with people who try to support me, like on my, kind of like public image journey, was that no, I will not do Facebook like other people do Facebook. I would not just, I'll decide what I'm not Beyonce. I will not be Beyonce about my image. And Uranus gives you that, okay? Uranus per se. This is not the moon Uranus person in here, is just the Uranus person, and he's being Uranian about like who he is. Let's see again, where is this? Where is this taking place? Where is Uranus at? Oh, this is, yeah. This is trying to see other things. No, this. So according to this, his Uranus is on the IC with Venus in the 8th and Jupiter in the 5th. Okay, so, but Venus is also ruling his 10th house with Saturn there. I think we got the houses not so. Oh, the sun. The sun is okay. The sun is co-present with the midheaven and Chiron and opposing his moon Uranus. So that would give me a more, you see what, like what you get is what you see, but kind of like as a, it's kind of like, well, it's a feature and not a bug, but sometimes it's a bug and not a feature kind of way. And that, I guess, is what makes it. And he was doing international competitions. So, yeah. Let's see if I could carry a little bit more. Aviator, solo transatlantic flight, Charles Lindbergh. Aviation. So we got some aviation. You see, Uranus is something unusual. It can be about the performing arts if it appears in such signs. Moon is about visibility, but Uranus is also technology, right? So new types of science, new innovations, but also the tubes that don't really, have a filter or have unusual opinions and so on. Moon Uranus in Sag. In the second, and this is an AA chart, so this is probably very accurate, with Jupiter and the anaretic degree of Capricorn in the 3rd house. And Saturn at its home sign, right next to Jupiter. So Jupiter is releasing from that conjunction. But his releasing could take like a week or so. It's a month even. It's a big releasing. Okay, it's not. It's two planets that move very slowly. 4 February 1902. Charles Lindbergh. So aviation here is clear. Okay, we got Sag. Technology around something that can travel long distances. And this is, it could also, I noticed that I saw some charts of astronauts that had Chiron in the 4th. I could be a good candidate for that. Although I don't see myself on a spaceship necessarily, but yes, before spaceship we have like an airplane. So, and Uranus gives us this space. So it makes sense. There is an opposition to Pluto and Neptune. So there's some sort of a mythical quality, but also ideation and evaluation involved. And if Mars Saturn is resolved at the wrestling scene, okay, the wrestling profession, the martial art profession, then Uranus Pluto is solved in the craftsmanship of spaceship and aeronautics. That's yes, and Uranus Neptune is at applying your own medicine. So it's kind of like, hey, you think you could fly that? Go ahead. So I guess that's what this would be about. Let's take a look. So this is the person, Charles Lindbergh, and he was American aviator and a military officer. made his first non-stop flight from New York to Paris alone for 33.5 hours. Don't laugh, it was the first solo flight, okay? I know it's kind of like 33.5 hours on air to get to Paris. Well, try swimming. His aircraft is the Spirit of Saint Louis, was designed and built by Ryan Airline Company. All jokes about Ryan Airline are cancelled from the comments. Okay. Specifically to compete from Orteig price for the first flight between two cities. Although not the first transatlantic flight, it was the first solo transatlantic flight and the longest at the time by nearly 2,000 miles. It became known as one of the most consequential flights in history and ushered a new era of air transportation between parts of the globe. So it is interesting because I opened today, I visited my parents and I came back and I didn't take my phone with me, as I sometimes do for the sake of it. So immediately I was like, hey, what's the news? What was the Venus-Pluto? Because I was looking at, hey, come on, give me some Venus-Pluto stuff. But I had the hacking into nervous system kind of was the hacking into the systems of the pilots, and they basically try to order pilots to land in basically enemy countries. So the pilots were like, yeah, that's probably not something that we would do, and they didn't do what they were told, and that's what I woke up to. And then Israel said, it's not a security issue. And they were also discussing what is the difference between this and hacking. And so what you must understand about hacking, I'm not an expert on that, I just look at like the basics. There is a part in hacking that is called social engineering, and most of what we think of hacking is not the anonymous persons, the anonymous like homeless in a sleeping bag that's kind of like poking at his computer and stuff, but it requires social engineering. And social engineering is basically when you meet people, when you enter buildings, when you have conversations, when you work at a company. And this is always involving spying. So you do not actually have too much hacking without getting some sort of social engineering, even if by pressing a link, which is more difficult than you might think that it is, but also at times more easy than you might think that it is. Other than that, I don't know anything about how it's actually done, because I'm not your social engineering type of person. I learned a little bit of how it's done when I was channeling, but it's not my natural character, and yes, so it's very interesting to kind of close this day with aviation as well. So yeah, and of course you had to work for the military, who would give you that kind of funding to do that kind of stuff. So yes. He earned the highest French Order of Merit, the Legion of Honors. July 1927, he was promoted to the rank of a colonel in the U.S. Air Corps Reserve. And his achievements spurred significant global interest in both commercial aviation and airmail, which revolutionized the aviation industry worldwide, a phenomenon dubbed the Lindbergh boom. He spent much time promoting these industries. So, sparking a new interest in an industry. So this is very interesting. It's very much in alignment with the full moon, because the full moon is the blooming of something. He wasn't the first person to do that, but he was bringing something into the ripeness, and that was the aviation that we know as today, as the commercial aviation, but also that which allows us to order something from another country and actually receive it in our country, without paying too much for that. And this is facilitated by technology, which was developed in the army, of course. So it's originated in us fighting each other. So yes, his firstborn infant was kidnapped and murdered in what the American media called the crime of the century. The case prompted the United States Congress to establish kidnapping as a federal crime if a kidnapper crosses state lines with a victim. So again, wow. This is getting even bigger, because also look at the years. Look at the years, okay? It's important to look at the years, because we are now approaching the Pluto opposition to these years. We are at the Pluto opposition to these years, pardon. We are at the Pluto opposition to these years. And you see how he brought into fruition not only aviation as we know it today, but also the implications of aviation in state law, or country, or nation law, country, the state. When I mean the nation state, not like a state in America. So in the month before US entered the Second World War, his non-interventionist stance and statement about Jews and race led some to believe he was a Nazi sympathizer, although he never publicly stated support for Nazis and condemned them with several times in both his public speeches and the personal diary. However, like many Americans before the attack on Pearl Harbor, he opposed not only to the military intervention of the US, but also the provision of military supplies to the British. He supported the isolationist America First Committee and resigned from the US Army Corps in April 1941 after President Franklin Roosevelt, that's the guy Einstein called, publicly rebuked him for his views. In September 1941, Lindbergh gave a significant address titled Speech on Neutrality, outlining his position and arguments against the greater American involvement in the war. Following Pearl Harbor, this was my next question. It's like, what about, what would he think then? In German declaration of war against the US, Lindbergh avidly supported the American war efforts, but was rejected for active duty as Roosevelt refused to restore his Air Corps colonel commission. Instead, okay, so he basically changed his mind, yes. He flew 50 combat missions to the Pacific Theater as a civilian consultant and was unofficially credited with shooting down an enemy aircraft. In 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower restored his commission and promoted him to brigadier general in the U.S. Force Reserve. In his later years, he became a Pulitzer Prize winning. Ways to win a Pulitzer. Okay. This should totally be a Flying Bombardier International episode. Author, international explorer, and environmentalist, helping to establish national parks in the U.S., national parks, and protect certain endangered species and tribal people in both the Philippines and East, God forbid, not in America. 1974, Lindbergh died of lymphoma, of the lymphs is moon. Tumors, lymph cancer, oh no. Yes, typically refuse to just the cancerous versions rather than all such tumors. Yeah. Enlarged lymph nodes are usually painless. The sweats are most common at night. Okay. So, key figure. And look at how many things he went through the transition. Okay, having his child being kidnapped, taken to another country by plane when he was the first solo pilot. Okay, so a lot of shocking stuff. I do not envy this person's Uranus journey. Um, where is it? Oh, it's probably here. There's Mars. Yes. Well, where's Saturn? Okay. So this will be it for this episode. I know I am exhausted. I know I have a mathematician here, but I'm just exhausted. So to process these people that had expressed their Uranus qualities of being kind of like an innovator slash underdog, and in relation to caregiving, to visibility, reflecting things in society, creating new sciences, and being thought-provoking, but also going through some shocking experiences as well. So, yeah, thank you for watching.